The lecture hall of the Litheron Institute of Xenosciences was not built for human proportions. The ceiling arched so high that sound carried like whispers in a cathedral, and the air held a sterile chill designed for species sensitive to heat. Transparent display screens floated in geometric symmetry above rows of tiered seating, projecting rotating diagrams of skeletal structures, organ systems, and alien habitats. The seats themselves varied: shallow basins for aquatic folk, cushioned cradles for insectids, articulated platforms for tribes. Only one seat, awkwardly modified at the edge of the third row, looked remotely human. Marcus Hale sat there with his elbows resting casually on his knees, listening to the whispers ripple around him. He didn't need translation software to catch the tone. Unease always sounded the same, no matter the language. That's the Deathworlder. Look at the density of his musculature. I heard his planet's air alone is toxic to 6 races. Marcus kept his eyes forward, pretending not to hear, though the corner of his mouth quirked at the exaggerations. Toxic air? That was new. The stories grew more dramatic each day. A shadow fell across the room. The murmur stilled. Professor Cyrix Vanel entered, a tall figure of segmented chitin, his carapace gleaming under the cold lights. 4 narrow eyes scanned the hall with practiced disdain. His mandibles clicked twice before he spoke, voice filtered through a translator that gave it a metallic resonance. Students, Cyrix began. Welcome to Xenobiology Foundations. Here we seek not merely to memorize alien physiology but to understand survival strategies across ecosystems. Knowledge is the shield that separates civilization from savagery. His gaze slid, inevitably, toward Marcus. Some among us come from planets where savagery reigns unchecked. A ripple of amusement passed through the class. Marcus sat straighter, either nodding nor flinching. Cyrix continued. We will study predators and prey, toxins and cures, instincts and adaptations. But let me be clear, instinct is a poor substitute for discipline. Civilized species survive through reasoned study, not improvisation. The last word hung in the air like an accusation. Marcus could almost feel every pair of eyes turning toward him. He kept his tone mild. Professor, he said, on Earth we do both. Study the ecosystem, then improvise when it tries to eat us. A few students made sharp, startled sounds, gasps or nervous clicks. Cyrix's mandibles twitched, irritation visible even through his rigid posture. Humor, the professor said coldly, may soothe one's fear, but it will not save one from a venomous strike. Do try to restrain your colorful remarks, Cadet Hale. Marcus leaned back. Yes, sir. The lecture resumed, Cyrix gliding across topics with precision. Holos of monstrous fauna flickered across the displays, translucent worms with serrated jaws, scaled brutes that trampled forests, elegant flyers with venom-tipped wings. Each was dissected with clinical detail. For many of you, Cyrix intoned, predators exist only as historical threats or distant curiosities. You have been fortunate to inherit orderly worlds. He paused, eyes narrowing slightly. But others here may know too much of chaos. Again, Marcus felt the subtle spotlight. He resisted rolling his eyes. Instead, he scribbled notes into his data pad, though most of what Cyrix described sounded tame compared to home. The so-called forest colossus resembled an oversized moose with claws. Earth had grizzlies, crocs, and hippos, each just as unforgiving. When the professor called for questions, a scaled student raised a trembling claw. Professor Cyrix, is it true humans live among predators daily? That they coexist? All eyes shifted to Marcus. Cyrix hesitated, clearly torn between silencing the question and exploiting it. Finally, he gestured stiffly. Cadet Hale, since you are here, enlighten us. Marcus met the reptilian student's wide gaze. Yeah, it's true. We don't avoid predators, we share space with them. We learn their habits, respect the danger, and adapt. Sometimes that means fences, sometimes weapons, sometimes just paying attention. You mean? Another student interrupted. You are not always at war with them? Not war, Marcus said with a shrug. More like constant negotiations. Most predators don't actually want to fight, they just want a meal. So you make sure it isn't you. Uneasy murmurs swept the hall. For a species born on sanitized worlds, the concept was alien. Even Syrinx's rigid posture faltered for a moment. An interesting perspective, the professor said curtly, though hardly sustainable in civilized society. Marcus leaned back again, letting the jab slide. His goal wasn't to win debates, it was to survive the semester without strangling the professor. At the lecture's end, Syrinx activated a hollow panel behind him. A vivid projection filled the air, a six-legged creature, sleek and barbed, its mandibles dripping venom. The class collectively recoiled. In our next session, Syrinx announced, we will conduct a live specimen demonstration. Observe closely. Real comprehension arises only when theory meets reality. Several students exchanged worried glances. One whispered, a live predator? Another's scales rippled pale with fear. Marcus tilted his head, studying the image with quiet curiosity. The thing looked nasty, sure, but not unmanageable. He'd wrangled worse during summer jobs back home. Should be fun, he muttered under his breath. Syrinx's antennae twitched. The professor's voice took on a silken, dangerous edge. Yes, Cadet Hale. We shall see just how fun it will be. The dismissal bell chimed, releasing the class. Aliens shuffled out in clusters, chattering in dozens of dialects. Marcus slung his bag over his shoulder and made for the exit, but not before catching a final glance from Syrinx, one that lingered too long, carrying something sharper than academic rigor. Behind closed office doors, later that evening, Syrinx keyed in a private request to the Institute's specimen vault. His mandibles clicked with satisfaction as he authorized an override, selecting a predator variant far more volatile than regulations allowed. One controlled demonstration, he murmured, and the Deathworlder's recklessness will reveal itself. The Council will see the truth. Humanity has no place among civilized minds. In the darkened office, the professor's eyes glinted. The game had begun. The following day, the lecture hall felt different. The usual chatter was hushed, voices clipped with unease. Students entered in cautious pairs, their movements stiff, antennae twitching, scales shifting, feathers ruffling. Word had spread quickly, today's session involved a live predator. For most, it would be their first direct encounter with anything remotely dangerous. Marcus Hale slid into his seat near the edge of the third row. He noticed the way the others leaned away, not just from the predator cage that waited at the front of the room, but from him as well. The rumors about humans thrived on fear, and today's demonstration fed every whisper. The cage itself was no ordinary container. Energy fields shimmered faintly, forming a transparent barrier around a hexagonal pen. Inside, something moved, low, deliberate, serpentine. Marcus caught a glimpse of glossy carapace, hooked limbs, and the glint of venomous mandibles. The creature's 6 legs scraped faintly at the alloy floor, leaving shallow gouges. Professor Syrinx Vanil stood beside it, arms folded, antennae raised high. His voice carried with cold precision. Students, before you is the Crithian Strangler. A predator evolved to hunt in darkness, capable of subduing prey 5 times its size. Venom sacs deliver neurotoxins that paralyze within seconds. Observe the mandibles, note the serrated edge, designed for both tearing and injection. He let the information hang, watching the unease ripple through his class. His gaze lingered, as always, on Marcus. Such creatures are rarely encountered in civilized regions. But nature's brutality cannot be ignored. Understanding it is crucial for those who would claim mastery of xenobiology. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Claim mastery? Or prove the human doesn't belong? The setup felt wrong. Syrinx paced along the barrier. Remain in your seats. The specimen is secure. Your task is to observe behavioral cues. The Crithian hissed, mandibles clicking as it pressed against the invisible wall. Several students flinched back, claws and wings tightening. Marcus, by contrast, leaned forward, studying its stance, noting the way its legs tensed before each lunge. It reminded him of alligators back home, waiting, patient, deadly only when opportunity came. Professor, Marcus asked, how long has it been in containment? Syrinx's eyes narrowed. Long enough for our purposes. That wasn't an answer. The hum of the barrier deepened, then wavered. A flicker ran across the field like a ripple in water. The predator stilled, sensing weakness. Professor? One of the avian students squawked. The field. A crackle split the air. The barrier collapsed in a shower of sparks. The Crithian bolted forward with terrifying speed, mandibles clacking, venom dripping onto the polished floor. Screams erupted. Students scrambled, some leaping over rows, others curling into defensive postures. Marcus didn't move at first. He simply watched the predator adjust to freedom, legs splayed wide, body coiling. It would strike at movement. Panic fed it. Stay still! Marcus barked. His voice cut through the chaos, startling more than the predator itself. The Crithian swiveled toward the sudden sound, then hissed. The professor stood frozen, mandibles slack. Whether shock or hidden satisfaction, Marcus couldn't tell. The predator advanced, claws clattering. A scaled student whimpered, backing into the wall. Marcus rose, calm and steady. Eyes on me, he muttered. He grabbed the nearest thing he could reach, a discarded lab coat draped over a rail, and shook it to draw attention. The Crithian's head snapped toward the motion. Come on, ugly, Marcus said under his breath. He waved the coat, stepping sideways to draw the beast away from the clustered students. His heart pounded, but the rhythm steadied him. This was no different than luring a croc away from camp. The Crithian lunged. Marcus sidestepped, the rush of air carrying venomous droplets past his arm. He swung the coat, smacking its mandibles, throwing it off balance. It reared, shrieking. Gasps filled the room. He's engaging it! He's insane! Someone shouted. Marcus ignored them. He dropped the coat, bait discarded, and lunged in close. The Crithian slashed, but he twisted low, catching one of its front limbs. Muscles strained as he hauled the limb sideways, forcing the predator to stumble. Got you! He hissed. The creature thrashed, mandibles snapping inches from his face. Marcus gritted his teeth, shifted his grip, and looped his belt, yanked free in a single motion, around the joint of its claws. A quick twist, a pull, and the mandibles clamped awkwardly against its own carapace. The Crithian bucked, slamming him against the cage frame. Pain shot through his ribs, but he held on. He braced his knee against its thorax, pressed hard at a vulnerable spot beneath its head, right where nerve clusters met exoskeleton. He'd seen similar spots in Earth's mantises. Pressure and leverage did the rest. The predator froze, body shuddering. Its limbs twitched weakly, then went still. Silence fell. Marcus knelt over the subdued creature, chest heaving, belt digging into his palms. Slowly he looked up. Every pair of eyes in the room was on him. Wide. Silent. Disbelieving. He broke the stillness with a dry smile. Guess that's one way to take notes. A nervous laugh escaped a feathered student, quickly smothered. Others simply stared, some in awe, some in horror. The Crithian hissed weakly beneath him, pinned but alive. Marcus loosened the belt just enough to keep control without crushing it. Professor, he called out evenly. Might want to recheck your containment protocols. Syrinx's mandibles twitched violently. His voice emerged strained, metallic edges sharper than before. Cadet Hale, you endangered this class with your reckless interference. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Interference? The thing was loose. I kept it from turning your lecture into a body count. Several students nodded, whispering. He saved us. He stopped it. Without him. Syrinx slammed his claws against the podium. Silence! The students fell quiet, though their eyes stayed fixed on Marcus. Holding the Crithian still, Marcus spoke plainly. I don't care what you think of humans, Professor. But don't call survival reckless. That thing didn't need theories or diagrams, it needed handling. That's what I did. For a long moment, The only sound was the labored rasp of the subdued predator. Finally, Marcus shoved the Crithian back into the damaged pen, securing it as best he could before stepping away. He wiped venom from his sleeve, rolled his shoulders, and returned calmly to his seat. No one spoke. No one moved. The silence was heavier than any roar. Marcus sat down, stretched his sore ribs, and muttered just loud enough for nearby students to hear. "Class dismissed?" The tension broke like glass. Some students barked laughter, others covered their mouths in shock. Eyes darted between Marcus and the fuming professor. Syrinx's gaze burned. His mandibles clicked a bitter rhythm. In a voice low and trembling with fury, he whispered words only Marcus caught. "This is not over, Deathworlder." The hall smelled of ozone and venom. Shattered arcs of the containment field still smoked along the floor where the Crithian strangler had broken free. Its cage hummed weakly, patched by emergency failsafes, while the subdued predator twitched inside, bound by Marcus's belt and a crude strap improvised from torn cloth. The silence that followed seemed louder than the chaos before. Students shifted uneasily, some staring at Marcus as if he were the predator, others with something closer to all. The weight of their gazes pressed from all sides. Marcus exhaled slowly, rolling his stiff shoulder. "Well," he said, voice steady, "guess that's one way to spice up a lecture." A feathered student let out a nervous squawk of laughter. Others glanced at one another, unsure whether to follow. No one dared to look at Professor Syrinx Vanel. The professor stood rigid, claws gripping the podium until the alloy frame groaned. His 4 eyes locked on Marcus, mandibles working in silence before sound finally emerged. "You acted without permission," Syrinx hissed. "You endangered every life in this chamber with your reckless theatrics." Murmurs spread through the rows, quiet but insistent. Marcus remained seated, calm as if he hadn't just wrestled a venomous monster. He met the professor's glare without flinching. "With respect," Marcus said, "the containment failed. You wanted us to observe, not become lunch. I didn't see anyone else stepping up." Gasps rose from the students. An aquatic cadet raised a trembling fin. "He saved us. If he hadn't—" "Silence!" Syrinx snapped, his mandibles clattering sharply. The fin dropped, but the eyes of the class did not. They lingered on Marcus, waiting for his next word. Marcus leaned forward, his tone measured. "You call it reckless. I call it survival. On Earth, you don't get the luxury of waiting for permission. You act or you don't make it home." That landed. He could see it in the faces around him. Fear, yes, but also dawning comprehension. Students from safe, manicured worlds had never considered such a reality. Syrinx's mandibles twitched. He stepped away from the podium, pacing with stiff, deliberate movements. "Survival is the language of animals, not scholars. You mistake brute instinct for intelligence." "No," Marcus replied evenly. "I use both. That's the difference." The Crithian hissed inside its weakened cage, venom still dripping from its mandibles. The sound punctuated the moment, underlining Marcus's point better than any lecture could. A scaled cadet near the back spoke up, voice unsteady but clear. "On my colony world, a predator like that destroyed 3 outposts before defenses were built. We lost families. What Cadet Hale did, he treated it like livestock. Controlled it." Another joined in, a feathered alien whispering with wide eyes. "He didn't panic. He read it, moved with it. None of us could do that." Syrinx's antennae flared, outrage flashing across his features. "Enough! You let his barbarism infect your judgment. He has manipulated you with spectacle." Marcus rose from his seat. The movement drew every gaze instantly. He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. "I didn't come here to show off," he said. "I came here to learn. But every day, I hear the same thing. Humans are reckless, humans are dangerous, humans don't belong. Today wasn't about me proving anything. It was about keeping everyone in this room alive. If that looks like barbarism to you, then maybe you've forgotten what survival actually means." The words struck deep. Some students lowered their eyes, ashamed. Others studied Marcus as if seeing him for the first time. Syrinx stiffened, mandibles clicking furiously. One moment of improvised violence does not erase millennia of progress. You are still what your world made you, unpredictable. Dangerous. Marcus held his stare. Dangerous isn't always bad. It depends on where you stand when the danger comes through the door. The hall remained quiet, filled only with the soft hum of damaged emitters. At last, Syrinx gestured sharply to the containment field. This session is concluded. All of you out. His voice trembled at the edges, not with fear but with rage barely controlled. Students hesitated, uncertain whether to obey, until Marcus nodded toward the exit. Slowly, they filed out in hushed groups, still casting glances over their shoulders. Whispers trailed after them. Deathworlder. Yes, but softened now, tinged with something closer to respect than fear. Marcus gathered his datapad, slung his bag over one shoulder, and started for the door. Syrinx's voice stopped him. Do not think this ends here, Cadet Hale. The professor's mandibles clicked with venom. One display of savagery will not convince the Concordium that your kind deserves a seat at this table. Marcus paused in the doorway. He didn't turn, but his words carried back across the empty hall. Wasn't trying to convince them, Professor. Just trying to make sure we all walked out breathing. Then he left, footsteps steady, fading into the corridor. Behind him, Syrinx remained by the damaged pen, his posture tight, his glare fixed on the door long after it closed. In the student commons later, Marcus found himself surrounded. Not crowded, exactly, aliens kept a wary distance, but a circle formed all the same. Questions flew from every direction. How did you know where to grab it? Were you not afraid? Do all humans fight like that? Marcus lifted his hands, laughing softly. One at a time. And yes, I was afraid. You think I want those mandibles in my face? Fear just doesn't get to drive when survival's in the passenger seat. The feathered student who had laughed earlier tilted her head. On your world, you do this regularly? Not exactly this, Marcus admitted. But close enough. Earth's full of things that don't care about regulations. You either learn fast or you stop learning at all. That silenced them for a beat. Then the scaled cadet spoke again, more softly. Maybe danger makes you stronger. Maybe that's why you survived where others would have perished. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't need to. The shift was already happening. He saw it in their eyes, the slow dismantling of fear, replaced with something harder to define. Curiosity. Cautious respect. When the crowd thinned, Marcus sat alone for a while, letting the adrenaline drain. He thought of Earth, the smell of pine, the bite of cold rivers, the weight of a gator's jaw clamping down on wood. He hadn't come here to prove anything. But somehow, proving himself seemed unavoidable. He leaned back, staring at the stars glittering through the transparent dome overhead. Maybe, he murmured, we've got a seat at the table after all.